take a moment to settle yourself. Pull a blanket over your shoulders, let your breathing slow, and imagine the quiet crackle of a fire on the edge of a vast plain. Tonight, we are not in the present world of glowing screens and city lights. Tonight, we walk backwards into a time before roads, before towns, before the sound of iron on stone. We are in the age when humanity still wandered, when survival meant waking each day with the rising sun, scanning the horizon for game, and trusting the land to provide just enough to last another night. Picture yourself in a band of perhaps 30 souls, mothers, fathers, children, elders, bound not by borders or property lines, but by the fragile rhythm of the hunt. The air is cool, tinged with the scent of grass after a rain, and the ground is damp beneath your feet. The people around you have no maps, no written records, no permanent dwellings. What they carry is knowledge, which roots can heal, which berries nourish, which trails the animals follow when the seasons shift. It is evening. The final hunt is underway. The men and women spread out across the brush, silent except for the occasional snap of a twig beneath a careful step. Ahead, the silhouettes of gazelles shift in the waning light. This is not just meat for tonight's meal. It is hide for clothing, bone for tools, sinew for bowstrings. The hunt is not recreation. It is life itself. For thousands of years, this was the only reality our species knew. Day after day, week after week, the horizon called us forward. We were foragers, wanderers, caretakers of fire and stone. The world was both our enemy and our provider. It gave us berries in summer and roots in winter. It gave us herds of animals that we followed across great distances. But it also gave famine, storm, and uncertainty. Every hunt carried risk. Every season demanded migration. And yet, on this night, something is about to shift. The people gathered here on this plain do not know it, but they are living at the edge of history's great transformation. Soon, humanity will trade this wandering life for something unimaginable. Seeds planted into soil, animals kept not just as prey but as companions, villages rising where once there had been only temporary camps. The first farm is just beyond the horizon. As you sink deeper into the warmth of your blanket, let your mind drift into the long twilight between worlds, the twilight where humans began to step away from pure survival and into the slow, deliberate work of shaping the earth itself. The final hunt begins not with spears alone, but with a choice humanity has not yet made. Imagine the quiet around the fire when the gazelle has been brought down. The hunters return, dragging their quarry into the circle of light. Children run forward, wide-eyed, eager to taste roasted meat. Elders nod, their faces carved with years of experience. For them, this cycle is eternal. They know no other way. They have seen winter return, seen the herds thin, seen hunger gnaw at their people, and yet they expect nothing different. But at the edge of the firelight, a young woman kneels with a handful of seeds. She has noticed something others overlooked. When the people discard scraps of grain or fruit pits, sometimes the plants sprout again in the very place where they camped before. She has no word for agriculture. She has no model for farming. She simply observes that food, in a sense, can return. Tonight, while the meat is cooking, she scatters a few seeds onto the damp soil. It is an act born of curiosity, not revolution. But in hindsight, it is the spark of everything to come. This is the threshold where the story of humanity changes. Close your eyes if you like, and imagine yourself on the ground beside her. Feel the cool soil beneath your palm. Smell the smoke of the fire, the roasted meat, the damp grass. Above, the stars sprawl endlessly across the sky, as they did for every generation before her. The constellations are the same ones you see today: Orion, the Great Bear, the shimmering band of the Milky Way. For the foragers, these stars are both compass and calendar. They tell when to move, when the rains will return, when the herds will pass again. But in 1,000 years, those same stars will mark planting and harvest. They will tell farmers when to sow and when to reap. The difference between the two worlds is almost invisible in this moment. To the foragers gathered at the fire, nothing has changed. To us, looking back, everything is about to change. The hook of this story is not just about food, it is about identity. For as long as humans had walked upright, our lives were defined by movement. We were children of rivers and plains, of forests and deserts. But farming would tether us. It would fix us in place. With seeds in the ground, one could not simply move on when resources grew thin. Fields required care. Villages required permanence. Rituals would form, not around the chase of the hunt, but around the cycle of planting and reaping. And so the last hunt is not a moment you can point to in history, but a threshold you can feel in your bones. It is a twilight moment, a liminal space between two ways of being. Imagine now, drifting closer to sleep, that you are part of this story. The fire fades. The children sleep. The elders murmur in low tones about tomorrow's march. And yet, in your hand, you hold a seed. Small, unremarkable, but filled with potential. A promise hidden in its shell. A promise that one day your descendants will no longer follow the herds but will call the land itself their provider. This is the hook to our journey. The moment before the first farm. The breath before the leap into history. Stay here in the stillness. Let the fire warm your face. Let the stars guide your thoughts. And prepare to walk with me as we trace how this fragile experiment of planting, tending, and staying in one place would forever reshape what it meant to be human. Curl yourself deeper into comfort, blanket drawn close, a warm cup of tea or coffee resting nearby. Let your breathing slow as we drift back in time, tens of thousands of years, to a world shaped not by roads or cities, but by glaciers, rivers, and wild forests. Imagine the chill of an ice age winter retreating across continents, glaciers slowly pulling back, leaving fertile valleys in their wake. The landscape is vast and empty, punctuated by rivers shimmering like silver threads in the sun. For millennia, humans lived as nomads, moving in small bands across these lands, following herds, seeking fruits, nuts, roots, and whatever else could be foraged. Survival depended on knowledge of the terrain, the seasons, the behavior of animals. Life was precarious but simple. Food in hand today, hope for tomorrow. Each member of the group played a role. Children learned the rhythm of the hunt. Elders remembered which plants could heal, which were toxic. Hunters tracked with acute patience and instinct. This was a world of constant motion, of keen observation, and of deep connection to the wild. As the Ice Age ended, roughly around 12,000 years ago, the world changed. Massive glaciers retreated, and the climate warmed. Rivers swelled with melted ice, carving fertile valleys that would later host some of the first great civilizations. The land became more predictable, offering reliable sources of wild grain and plants in concentrated regions. Human groups began noticing patterns, where wild barley grew thickest, where emmer wheat sprouted seasonally, and which riverbanks were richest in waterfowl. Slowly, humans learned that some landscapes gave more than others, and that if they stayed nearby, they could harvest not only what nature offered freely, but also what they could influence. Picture this world: rolling valleys fringed with forests, meadows dotted with grazing animals, reeds lining clear rivers, and patches of wild grains swaying in gentle winds. The air is rich with earthy aromas, the hum of insects, the call of distant birds. Humans, small in number but clever and observant, notice that some seeds dropped or discarded near camps sprout and flourish the following season. This is the first glimmer of intentionality, the very beginnings of agriculture. Wild grains, abundant yet inconsistent, demanded careful attention. Harvesting them was seasonal and labor-intensive. Humans gathered what they could, threshing the grain with simple sticks, grinding it between stones into coarse flour, and cooking it into early forms of porridge or flatbread. It was sustenance, yes, but also practice, learning the cycles of growth and decay, observing patterns that would become crucial in the centuries ahead. Each observation was a lesson in cause and effect. The right soil, the right moisture, the right time of year. But humans did not only interact with plants. Animals too became part of the story. Dogs, once wild wolves, lingered near camps, gradually forming bonds with people. Sheep, goats, and eventually cattle were first hunted, then tended, then bred selectively. These relationships were not merely economic, They were transformative, reshaping daily life, social organization, and even spiritual beliefs. Early humans learned that survival could be extended through foresight, tending animals, storing grains, and observing seasonal cycles rather than merely reacting to them. This transitional period, the end of the Ice Age and the beginnings of domestication, was not sudden. It unfolded over centuries, with trial and error, successes and failures. Some groups continued their nomadic lives, while others began to settle, testing the waters of permanence. Those who stayed in one place discovered both opportunity and challenge. Food security increased, but so did vulnerability to crop failure, disease, and social tension. New tools became essential: sickles, grinding stones, digging sticks. Labor became repetitive yet vital, shaping bodies and routines in ways never seen before. At the same time, culture evolved alongside survival strategies. Rituals emerged tied to planting and harvest. Early humans recognized patterns in the heavens: the phases of the moon, the movements of the sun, the rising and setting of stars, and connected these to the cycles of the earth. They created stories, songs, and symbolic acts around the growing and reaping of crops. In a sense, agriculture did not merely sustain the body. It began to shape the mind, imagination, and society. This was humanity's first experiment with control over the environment, over food, over time itself. By planting seeds, humans began to transform the unpredictability of nature into a form of predictability. By domesticating animals, they turned raw chaos into managed systems of survival. Villages arose, communities expanded, and the first glimmers of civilization took root, even in these small, scattered beginnings. Imagine walking through an early Neolithic valley. A young woman scatters barley seeds into freshly tilled soil. A child kneels at a grinding stone, crushing grains for porridge. A man tends goats nearby, watching them graze and ensuring none wander too far. Smoke curls from small fires, mixing with the scent of damp earth. Around them, the natural world is present and wild, but humans are beginning to leave fingerprints. Cleared fields, small pens, simple pathways, rudimentary storage pits. Every action is careful, deliberate, and steeped in a new kind of awareness. The recognition that humans can shape their destiny through patience, observation, and labor. Health and diet began to change alongside these behaviors. Sedentary living brought stability but also new vulnerabilities. Crowded huts, proximity to animals, reliance on single crops. These introduced disease and malnutrition. Bones reveal stress and wear. Teeth bear marks of coarse grinding. Skeletons tell stories of shorter stature and anemia in early farming communities. Yet population density rose, social organization became more complex, and humanity learned resilience in the face of adversity. The introduction of farming also reshaped social structures. Knowledge became specialized. Elders remembered patterns of planting and harvesting. Skilled hunters still tracked game beyond the fields. Women often managed grain processing and early storage. Children learned labor alongside play. Communities had to negotiate resource distribution, cooperation, and conflict. Permanence demanded social innovation just as much as agricultural innovation. Through all this, human curiosity and observation remained central. Every experiment, every discarded seed, every trial with an animal or tool added to cumulative knowledge. It was a gradual awakening to the power of human foresight. In these valleys of wild grain, with rivers flowing and forests encroaching, the blueprint of future civilization was being sketched. Not yet complete, not yet recognizable, but unmistakably present. So tonight, as you sink into your blanket, imagine these valleys, these fires, these early humans. Feel the cool soil beneath your fingers, the weight of a basket of grain, the soft brush of a goat's coat. Listen to the wind, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird. This is the world on the cusp of transformation. A world where curiosity, patience, and labor will create the first deliberate steps toward agriculture, settlement, and civilization itself. You are witnessing not just history, but the moment when humans began to shape the future, consciously. From here, every seed planted, every animal domesticated, every hut built, moves humanity one step further away from the uncertainty of the hunt and one step closer to shaping the world as we know it. Pull the blanket closer around your shoulders. Take a deep breath and imagine yourself in a world long before villages, cities, or even roads existed. The wind rustles across endless grasslands and forests. You are part of a small band of humans, moving with the seasons, following the herds, tracing the courses of rivers. Life is defined by motion, by survival, by the eternal rhythm of foraging. You wake with the sun, scan the horizon for game, forage for roots, nuts, and berries, and move when the land exhausts its generosity. Yet beneath this rhythm lies a subtle tension. Movement is necessary for survival, but it is exhausting. Each year brings a different route, a different challenge, a different threat. Hordes of insects, shifting climates, sudden storms, predators, every day carries risk. Hunters track animals across vast distances, only to find them gone by morning. Gathering for sustenance often requires bending, climbing, and long marches. Life is precarious, but it is all the humans know. Then, gradually, change begins. Not sudden, not intentional at first, but perceptible to those who observe the land closely. They notice fertile valleys where seeds fall naturally from wild grasses and sprout seasonally. Streams that do not dry, sheltered hollows that protect them from harsh winds. Over time, staying in one place becomes feasible, even desirable. Humans begin to experiment with pauses in movement, lingering in spots richer in resources than others. They are still hunters and foragers, but they begin to understand that the earth itself can be a partner. Why leave nomadism? The answer lies partly in survival, partly in opportunity. Permanent settlement reduces the energy spent constantly relocating. It allows humans to tend the land, manage food, and cultivate predictable sources. Staying put means easier access to water, easier management of animals, and the ability to store surplus food. It also enables social cohesion. Extended families can gather in one location. Knowledge can accumulate. Skills can be passed down with continuity, and cooperation becomes more effective. But leaving the life of movement is not merely logistical, it is psychological. For thousands of years, humans defined themselves by wandering. Their identity, their freedom, and their understanding of the world were tied to motion. Choosing to settle means giving up the horizon, constraining movement, and accepting responsibilities unknown to the hunter-gatherer. The promise of stability must outweigh the allure of endless open space. Imagine a group on the edge of a fertile floodplain. Children play near the riverbank while adults gather edible plants, observing carefully which seeds sprout where. In the distance, a hunter carries a freshly killed deer. This is life at the cusp of transformation, part nomadic, part experimental, part tentative. The people do not yet know that they are on the threshold of a revolution. Their choices will ripple through generations. Environmental changes also push humans towards settlement. As the Ice Age receded, climate patterns became more predictable. Some regions offered an abundance of wild cereals and tubers that could be harvested seasonally without exhausting the soil immediately. Rivers flooded regularly, depositing nutrient-rich silt and creating fertile fields. These conditions encouraged repeated presence. It is easier to return to a familiar, reliable location than to traverse unpredictable terrain year after year. Technology plays a role too. Early humans learned to manipulate simple tools: digging sticks, baskets for collection, rudimentary storage pits. They experiment with carrying, sowing, and harvesting seeds. Even without the concept of farming, they begin influencing plant growth. Observing patterns, experimenting with seed placement, they develop an intuitive understanding that permanence allows them to guide nature rather than merely react to it. Social pressures cannot be ignored. Small bands, moving constantly, have limited capacity to support large populations. By staying in one place, humans can increase population density. Villages emerge, allowing more complex social structures. Elders accumulate wisdom, children learn collaboratively, and knowledge of local resources can be shared and refined over decades. This creates a feedback loop. More people can live in one place, making settlement advantageous. Settlement allows more people to survive. Yet the transition is not without challenge. Sedentary life introduces new risks. Disease spreads more easily. Dependence on a few crops creates vulnerability, and conflicts over territory emerge. Every choice to remain carries both promise and peril. Humans weigh these costs instinctively: the benefit of security, the capacity to plan for future scarcity, and the comfort of a fixed home outweigh the inherent dangers. Over time, these decisions become habitual. Nomadism fades not because it is obsolete, but because permanence offers something new, a framework for experimentation, growth, and community. This shift also transforms labor. In nomadic life, the day's work is diverse: hunting, foraging, crafting, moving. In permanent settlement, labor is repetitive, specialized, and continuous. Fields must be tended, seeds planted, harvests stored, animals cared for. This repetition is laborious, yet it fosters innovation. New tools, new strategies, and new social roles emerge. Humans learn the rhythm of the seasons intimately, marking time by soil, moon, and stars. Knowledge accrues, not individually, but collectively. Furthermore, leaving nomadism changes the human relationship with the environment. Land becomes property in a primitive sense. Food is no longer solely a gift of chance, but an achievement of planning and management. Humans begin to see themselves as agents shaping the world rather than solely reacting to it. This mindset is subtle but profound. It is the cognitive step toward civilization. Imagine walking through an early settlement. Huts cluster near a river, smoke curling lazily from hearths. Children gather seeds for later planting. Women grind grains on stones. Hunters prepare to track game but also monitor nearby flocks. Dogs lounge nearby, their eyes alert. Goats and sheep graze in pens. The environment is alive, but humans are shaping its rhythm. There is security, but also responsibility, effort, and constant vigilance. Leaving nomadism is not a single moment. It is gradual. A group might linger longer near a fruitful valley one season, then the next year make the same choice. Over generations, this choice becomes the default. Camps turn into proto-villages. Fire pits become permanent hearths. Storage pits become granaries. Paths become worn trails connecting settlements. The horizon narrows, but life stabilizes. At night, sitting by the fire, humans begin to reflect, without words, without writing, on what it means to stay. They notice patterns in growth, in the behavior of animals, in the cycles of the moon. Their attention to detail becomes cultural memory, passed from elder to child. These practices will form the bedrock of agriculture, social organization, and eventually, urban civilization. This is the moment where humanity's destiny subtly shifts. The wanderer becomes the farmer. The hunter becomes the cultivator. The human relationship with the land moves from dependence on chance to engagement with management, observation, and experimentation. Every seed planted, every animal kept, every shelter made permanent reinforces the new rhythm of life. As you sink deeper into your blanket tonight, imagine yourself beside these early humans. Feel the cool soil beneath your feet, the warmth of the fire, the soft rustle of animals nearby. Hear the hum of insects and the distant call of birds. Sense the tension between freedom and stability, the quiet choice to linger in fertile valleys rather than chase the uncertainty of the hunt. This is the point where humanity steps into the slow, deliberate work of shaping its future. Leaving nomadism is both a practical and symbolic leap. It represents humanity's first major conscious manipulation of the environment. It is the decision to invest effort in a single place, to cultivate reliability, to take the first steps toward permanence. It sets the stage for villages, cities, and civilizations, and it marks the opening of a long, complex chapter in which humans increasingly manage not only plants and animals, but also their own collective destiny. Tonight, as your breathing slows and your mind drifts toward sleep, hold this thought. The first humans who lingered, who planted, who tended, and who learned to live in one place, laid the foundation for everything that followed. Their choice to stay, to experiment, and to endure transformed survival into civilization, uncertainty into possibility, and wandering into rootedness. Imagine the dawn breaking over a misty valley, dew glistening on blades of grass. You are crouched near the edge of a small river, the air cool against your skin. Around you, the soft murmur of early morning, birds calling, the river rippling over stones, leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. For thousands of years, humans have wandered these lands, following herds, gathering roots and berries, hunting for survival. But today, something subtle has changed. Today, you notice the first evidence that humans are beginning to guide the growth of the world itself. Seeds, small, unassuming, easily overlooked. Yet, for the first time, humans begin to treat them not as incidental leftovers of meals or natural detritus, but as tools for shaping the future. In the soft soil near the riverbank, a young woman presses grains into the earth, carefully spacing them, burying them, covering them. She does not know the word farming, but she is acting with intention, testing a hypothesis. If I plant these seeds, will they return to me? Will they grow stronger than in the wild? Will the earth provide more than the hunt ever has? This experiment is tentative. Early humans still rely on foraging and hunting for the majority of their calories. But over time, repeated observations reveal a pattern. Seeds left on the edges of camps or in areas of light disturbance sprout with remarkable reliability. Some plants thrive where humans disturb the soil, drop scraps, or discard husks. They notice that certain grains are hardier, more nutritious, easier to harvest. Gradually, the idea emerges. Humans can encourage growth. Humans can plant. The earliest evidence of such intentional planting is visible in archaeological sites across the Fertile Crescent, from Jericho to Çatalhöyük. Carbonized grains, buried deliberately in pits, suggest early experimentation with controlled growth. Similar patterns appear independently in the Indus Valley, the Nile floodplains, and parts of East Asia. In each case, humans move from mere observation to action, laying seeds into the soil, testing the soil's response, and beginning a rhythm of care and labor that will define civilization. Think of the tactile aspects: hands pressing seeds into moist earth, fingertips smoothing over rows, careful attention to depth and spacing. Every action is learned, refined over repeated seasons. The earliest fields are small patches, easily overlooked. But within these tiny experiments lies the blueprint for agriculture. Humans are learning the rhythm of planting and harvesting, observing the sun and the moon, the timing of rain, the cycles of insects and animals. Tools assist these early efforts. Simple digging sticks, sometimes hardened in fire, allow humans to break the soil gently without damaging young shoots. Baskets carry collected seeds. Charred stones help mark boundaries or enrich the soil. Even without plows, humans begin to manipulate the land with intention. The act of planting is not only practical, but cognitive. Humans are beginning to see cause and effect over long spans of time, imagining the invisible growth beneath the soil and planning for months ahead. Intentional planting also changes social organization. When a patch of land proves fertile, groups linger near it. Families divide labor. Some tend the seeds, others continue foraging or hunting. Knowledge is shared: which grains are easiest to sprout, how much water the soil needs, where pests congregate. The process of planting fosters cooperation, experimentation, and the accumulation of shared wisdom. Children grow up learning the rhythm of seed and soil, a cultural knowledge that extends beyond individual memory. This period also sparks symbolic and spiritual behavior. Seeds are small but powerful, representing life, sustenance, and potential. Early humans begin to integrate planting into rituals: offerings to spirits of the land, protective gestures over fields, prayers for rain. Archaeologists have found figurines, carvings, and ceremonial objects associated with planting and harvest, suggesting that human consciousness is intertwining survival with meaning. The act of planting is not merely economic, it is philosophical, existential. Humans begin to acknowledge their ability to influence fate. One can imagine the day-to-day reality. A small group of humans kneels in a shallow trench, planting a row of barley or wheat. The soil smells damp, rich with organic life. Insects hum quietly around the edges. Birds watch from nearby branches, waiting for opportunities. Sweat glistens on brows. The rhythm of planting is meditative. Press, cover, water if possible, step back, observe. It is repetitive, yet purposeful, an early form of mindfulness embedded in survival. The impact on diet, though subtle at first, is profound. By encouraging certain plants to grow, humans begin to accumulate predictable sources of calories. The wild diet of berries, roots, and hunted meat is supplemented with reliable grains. This predictability allows humans to linger in one place longer, reducing the need for constant movement. Over time, this sedentary tendency lays the foundation for villages, storage pits, and early social hierarchies. Climate and environment play a critical role. Fertile valleys, river floodplains, and regions with predictable rainfall are naturally more suitable for early planting. Humans learn to recognize the subtle signs of soil fertility, drainage, and seasonal changes. Over generations, this knowledge becomes encoded culturally. When to plant, when to harvest, which seeds are strongest, which soils are most reliable. Observation becomes data, experience becomes knowledge, knowledge becomes tradition. Intentional planting also shapes the human body and cognition. Sedentary living encourages repetitive physical movements, strengthening specific muscles while changing posture over time. Attention spans adapt to the cycles of growth. Humans learn to delay gratification, understanding that care and patience today yield food months later. This ability to plan, to defer immediate reward for future sustenance, is a cognitive leap, a precursor to the abstract thinking that will underlie later civilizations. Across continents, these early practices converge into a shared human story. From the Fertile Crescent to the Yellow River, from the Indus Valley to Mesoamerica, humans independently recognize the principle: you can plant and cultivate. Each region adapts local species, barley, wheat, millet, rice, maize, according to climate, soil, and cultural preference. The diversity of approaches is remarkable, yet the underlying concept is the same. Humans are shaping their environment intentionally, a radical departure from pure foraging. Night falls, and the planting concludes for the day. Humans gather near the fire, tired but filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. The seeds rest beneath the soil, invisible yet potent, their potential to reshape society profound. Around the fire, children ask questions, elders impart guidance, and all participate in a ritual of care. Though the act seems small, scattering tiny grains, the implications are vast. Survival becomes partly a function of planning, observation, and deliberate intervention. In this way, intentional planting is not a single moment, but a process unfolding across generations. It bridges observation and action, necessity and experimentation, survival and culture. It is the first conscious step toward agriculture, settlement, and the structured societies that will follow. As you drift deeper into relaxation, imagine your hand hovering over the soil, pressing in a grain of wheat or barley, feeling the life pulse beneath your fingertips. Hear the quiet of the valley, the soft call of birds, the distant murmur of water. Sense the collective heartbeat of early humans, cautious yet determined, experimenting, learning, and shaping the very ground beneath them. This is the world at the threshold of farming, tentative, experimental, alive with possibility. Every planted seed represents hope, observation, and intention. Every patch of soil nurtured by careful hands becomes a stepping stone toward permanence, population growth, and ultimately, civilization. Imagine the soft glow of dawn spilling over a gentle valley, the mist rising in thin tendrils from the river. You are crouched near the edge of a small encampment, the scent of damp earth and smoke mingling in the cool morning air. Around you, early humans stir, readying themselves for another day of survival. But in the midst of this familiar rhythm, a subtle shift is taking place, one that will alter the course of human history forever. Humans are no longer simply hunters and foragers. They are beginning to form enduring relationships with animals, learning not only to coexist but to guide, protect, and breed them. Dogs were among the first to bridge the gap between wild and human society. Descended from wolves, These early canines were drawn to human encampments, scavenging scraps and providing early warning of predators or intruders. Over generations, a mutual understanding formed. Humans tolerated their presence and, in return, dogs offered companionship, protection, and assistance in tracking game. The relationship was subtle at first, a wary coexistence, but gradually, selective interaction led to behavioral changes in the animals themselves. Wolves that were friendlier and more adaptable thrived near humans, while humans learned to reward traits that aided survival. Now, picture a young child tossing scraps to a small, alert wolf that lingers at the edge of the camp. The animal is cautious but curious, eyes fixed on the offering. This simple act of feeding, repeated over seasons, establishes trust and recognition. Humans begin to notice patterns. Which animals are calm, which are aggressive, which are helpful in hunting. Over centuries, this feedback loop between humans and wolves creates the first domesticated dogs. These early companions are not only pets, they are co-workers, protectors, and partners in survival. Dogs are just the beginning. Humans soon turn their attention to animals with direct utility for food, clothing, and labor. Sheep and goats, abundant in many fertile valleys, are gradually tamed. Initially, humans corral small herds near camps, offering protection from predators and selectively allowing the most docile individuals to reproduce. Over generations, these animals develop traits favorable to humans: manageable size, docility, higher fertility, and consistent milk or meat production. Humans in turn adapt. They learn herding techniques, seasonal migration patterns, and basic veterinary care, forming the foundations of pastoral knowledge. Imagine a shepherd guiding a small herd of goats along a riverbank, using gentle commands in the presence of a domesticated dog to keep the animals together. The goats are not fully wild. They are beginning to respond to human cues, moving in synchrony with the group, resting when instructed, alerting to danger when a predator approaches. The relationship is cooperative. Humans provide protection and guidance, while the animals provide sustenance and material resources. The rhythms of feeding, breeding, and seasonal movement become a part of daily life, integrating humans more closely with the natural world. The domestication process is gradual and experimental. Not every animal adapts successfully. Some remain too wild or aggressive, others fail to reproduce reliably in captivity. Humans observe, experiment, and adjust, separating aggressive males, favoring docile females for breeding, adjusting grazing areas to balance nutrition and containment. This selective process demonstrates a nascent understanding of heredity long before formal knowledge of genetics exists. Humans intuitively grasp that certain traits can be encouraged through careful selection and attentive care. Domesticated animals begin to influence the structure of early human settlements. With herds nearby, humans can remain in one place longer, confident in a steady supply of food and materials. Wool, milk, meat, and hides become central to subsistence, while dung enriches soil or fuels fires. Herding practices encourage social organization. Responsibilities are divided, group decision-making is necessary, and leadership emerges to manage resources and maintain order. Animal domestication is not merely about survival. It reshapes society, labor, and culture. Dogs, sheep, and goats also carry symbolic and spiritual significance. Many early societies integrate animals into ritual, mythology, and art. Figurines, carvings, and ceremonial depictions suggest that animals were revered as partners, symbols of prosperity, or mediators between humans and the unseen world. Humans begin to perceive themselves not just as predators or gatherers, but as caretakers and participants in a broader ecological network. Animals become collaborators in existence, shaping beliefs, social hierarchies, and daily routines. Consider the tactile reality of herding. Hands reach out to steady a sheep, fingers brush against soft wool. A dog nuzzles at the feet of its master. Humans must learn to read behavior, signals of fear, aggression, curiosity, or hunger. Observing and responding to these cues becomes a cognitive skill, reinforcing empathy, patience, and attentive observation. These are not merely practical lessons, they are formative experiences, influencing how early humans think, plan, and relate to life around them. The practical implications of domestication extend to food security and health. With animals nearby, humans can store milk, preserve meat through drying or smoking, and produce fiber for clothing. Nutrition becomes more predictable, reducing vulnerability to famine. Herding encourages population stability, allowing groups to grow larger than would be sustainable solely through hunting. This reliability frees some humans to focus on other tasks: toolmaking, pottery, building rudimentary shelters, and exploring cultural or spiritual expression. Domestication also introduces challenges. Living in close proximity to animals increases exposure to parasites and disease. Herds must be rotated or protected from overgrazing. Conflicts over water, grazing areas, or predation emerge. Humans adapt with fences, corrals, and coordinated group effort. These solutions are early examples of problem-solving and engineering. Humans begin to actively manage both land and animal populations to sustain life. Through domestication, humans extend their influence over the environment in subtle but profound ways. By guiding the behavior of animals, humans learn patience, foresight, and responsibility. They practice selective breeding, resource management, and long-term planning. These skills, rooted in care, observation, and experimentation, lay the foundation for later agriculture, permanent settlements, and complex societies. Imagine a valley at twilight. Goats and sheep graze quietly near the huts. A dog patrols the perimeter, ears twitching at distant sounds. Humans gather around a fire, grinding grain, tending to hides, discussing the day's work. The relationship between humans and animals is fully intertwined. Each supports the other, each influences the other, each grows in understanding. This cooperation creates the first rhythm of life that is both stable and adaptable, a precursor to villages, towns, and eventually cities. Across continents, the pattern repeats. In the Fertile Crescent, in the Indus Valley, along the Yellow River, humans are domesticating species uniquely suited to their local environments. The principle remains the same. Careful observation, selective breeding, and consistent care create dependable partnerships with animals. From this emerges a fundamental truth about human civilization. Our mastery of the environment begins not with conquest, but with cooperation. Night falls on the valley, and the humans rest alongside their animals. Dogs curl at the feet of their masters. Goats and sheep huddle in pens. Smoke rises from hearths, carrying the scent of cooking meat and grain. The stars emerge overhead, unchanging, guiding cycles of planting, harvesting, and herding. Humans reflect not consciously but instinctively on their place in this world and their role in shaping it. In this quiet, reflective moment, recognize the profound shift that domestication represents. Humans are no longer solely dependent on wild resources. They are partners with animals, shaping survival, society, and the future. The subtle bonds forged in these valleys will ripple across millennia, influencing everything from diet and clothing to social organization, trade, and spirituality. Tonight, as your breathing slows and your mind drifts toward sleep, picture yourself tending a small herd, feeling the soft nudge of a dog, the warm breath of goats, the calm movement of sheep. Sense the rhythm of early civilization emerging from these interactions. Witness the moment when humans extend their care beyond themselves, taking the first conscious steps toward managing life itself, both animal and human, planting the seeds of trust, cooperation, and permanence that will shape the future. Take a deep breath and imagine yourself settling into a small, Neolithic village. The morning sun casts golden light across a valley now dotted with simple huts, hearths smoking gently, and small pens holding goats and sheep. You are no longer wandering with the seasons, but dwelling in one place, the soil tilled, the fields planted, the herds nearby. At first, this permanence brings relief, a break from the uncertainty of nomadic life, the predictability of food, the comfort of shelter. But with stability comes new complexities, subtle yet profound, reshaping human life in ways no one could have foreseen. Living in one place introduces vulnerability. The same fields that provide reliable grain are also susceptible to pests, drought, and soil depletion. A single failed harvest could threaten the community's survival. Humans, long accustomed to moving when resources ran low, now face the challenge of contingency. Storage pits and granaries become essential, and the knowledge of how to protect and ration food becomes a daily preoccupation. Failure is no longer temporary. It could have consequences for months or even years. Sanitation emerges as a new concern. Crowded huts, human and animal waste, and stagnant water create conditions favorable for parasites and disease. Epidemics that would have been fleeting among nomadic bands now have the potential to linger and spread. Early humans begin experimenting with disposal techniques, simple latrines, and designated areas for animals, learning through trial and error that health is closely linked to environment. Observation of illness, both human and animal, becomes a form of practical science, guiding daily decisions. Nutrition shifts as well. A sedentary diet often relies heavily on a few staple crops, reducing variety. While grains provide calories, they may lack essential nutrients, leading to new health challenges. Anemia, dental wear, and stunted growth are evident in skeletal remains from early farming communities. The transition from diverse forage diets to concentrated cultivated foods brings both stability and risk. Humans must innovate, combining grains with milk, meat, legumes, and seasonal wild plants to maintain balanced nutrition. Social structure becomes more complex. With permanent settlement, the community grows larger than a small foraging band. Cooperation is essential, but so is conflict management. Disputes over land, water, or stored food require negotiation and social roles that did not exist in nomadic life. Leaders emerge, tasked with organizing labor, mediating disputes, and coordinating collective effort. The concept of authority, though rudimentary, begins to take shape as communities rely on shared rules to maintain harmony. The environment itself poses challenges. Living in one spot demands adaptation to seasonal changes, weather extremes, and ecological limits. Floods can destroy fields and homes, fires can sweep through clustered huts, and predators may target confined livestock. Humans respond by reinforcing structures, building fences and ditches, and observing environmental patterns more closely. These responses reflect not only practical ingenuity, but a growing understanding of the delicate balance between human activity and natural forces. Repetition and labor specialization become central to daily life. Tasks are no longer seasonal and varied as in foraging. Tending fields, managing livestock, maintaining storage, and repairing dwellings occupy daily schedules. While physically taxing, this repetition fosters skill refinement and technological innovation. Early tools are improved, techniques are refined, and knowledge accumulates across generations. Sedentary life, though demanding, allows for mastery of tasks previously impossible in nomadic existence. Mental and cultural life is also affected. Humans begin to form deeper attachments to place, creating rituals, traditions, and narratives tied to their village. Sacred spaces emerge, marking fertile fields or communal areas. Early art, symbolic objects, and ceremonial practices flourish within the stability of a fixed settlement. These cultural developments are not separate from daily survival. They are entwined, reinforcing identity, community cohesion, and shared values. Psychologically, permanence brings both comfort and tension. Humans lose some of the freedom of the hunt, exchanging mobility for security. Decisions become more deliberate. When to plant, when to harvest, how to distribute resources. There is an increased need for foresight and planning, as failures cannot be escaped by movement alone. Yet, this very necessity cultivates foresight, patience, and cooperative decision-making, skills that will underpin future social complexity. The challenges of sedentary life also drive innovation in storage and preservation. Granaries are dug, pits lined with clay to keep pests away. Drying, smoking, and fermentation techniques are refined. Humans discover that careful management of resources extends survival beyond the immediate season. This foresight marks a cognitive leap. Humans begin to see months, years, and seasons as manageable units of time, allowing planning far beyond the immediate need for survival. Interaction with animals continues to evolve. Livestock require protection, fodder, and rotational grazing. Humans must track reproduction cycles, illness, and herd behavior, balancing the needs of multiple species alongside crops. This management fosters observational acuity, problem-solving, and long-term planning skills. Domesticated animals are no longer merely partners. They are integral to the rhythm and sustainability of settlement life. Nightfall brings reflection. Around the fire, humans gather to process grains, tend to animals, mend tools, and exchange knowledge. The risks of sedentary life are evident, but so are the rewards: predictable food, shared labor, and cultural cohesion. Each generation learns from the previous, refining techniques, adjusting practices, and developing resilience. The valley becomes a laboratory, a home, and a classroom, where survival and innovation intertwine. Through these challenges, humans gradually understand that settlement is a dynamic negotiation with the environment, society, and themselves. Success depends on adaptability, cooperation, and foresight. Sedentary living is not merely a change of location, it is a transformation of thought, behavior, and relationship to the natural world. Humans learn that permanence demands care, observation, and collective responsibility. As you relax further, imagine yourself in the heart of this village. The soft bleating of goats, the crackle of the fire, the smell of freshly turned soil and cooking grain. Feel the tension between risk and stability, between labor and reward. Sense the subtle triumphs and failures, the experimentation, the learning. This is the crucible in which civilization is forged, where humans learn that staying in one place is both a challenge and an opportunity. A delicate balance that will define the trajectory of our species. Sedentary life is not the end of struggle, but the beginning of a new kind of mastery. Humans must contend with disease, crop failure, social conflict, and environmental unpredictability. In overcoming these challenges, they develop strategies, systems, and institutions that will become the foundation for complex societies. The lessons of early villages, cooperation, planning, innovation, and cultural expression echo forward through history, shaping every subsequent step of human civilization. Tonight, as your breathing slows and the warmth of your blanket envelopes you, picture this valley as it might have been. Humans working steadily, learning from mistakes, observing patterns, caring for animals and plants, and negotiating the delicate equilibrium of settled life. The challenges they face are immense, yet their response, patience, ingenuity, and cooperation marks the first step toward a civilization capable of shaping the world rather than merely reacting to it. Sedentary living is the first sustained experiment in human society, an environment where daily life demands foresight, coordination, and persistent effort. From this crucible, knowledge accumulates, culture emerges, and civilization begins to take root. Every hearth tended, every field planted, every animal managed is a testament to human adaptability, resilience, and the quiet determination to endure and thrive in one place. Picture yourself waking to the pale light of dawn in a small Neolithic settlement. Smoke curls from clay hearths, the faint clatter of stone and wood carries through the morning air, and the scent of freshly turned earth mingles with the aroma of early grains. Around you, humans begin their daily tasks, not hunting across distant plains, but tending the soil, guiding plants to maturity, and preparing tools that will shape the future of food, labor, and civilization. The quiet rhythm of these tasks is meditative, yet profoundly transformative. Early agriculture demanded not only patience, but ingenuity. Humans needed implements capable of cutting, gathering, and processing the growing crops. The first true agricultural tools emerge from necessity. Simple digging sticks evolve into sturdier implements, and eventually into primitive hoes and mattocks. These tools allow humans to break, aerate, and cultivate the soil efficiently. Each innovation is a direct response to the challenges of permanence, productivity, and survival. Sickles are among the first specialized tools of harvest. Initially fashioned from flint, obsidian, or later polished stone, these curved blades allow humans to cut standing grasses and cereals with precision. The motion is rhythmic: bend, sweep, slice, gather, and requires coordination and focus. Early sickles are small, handheld, often hafted with wood or bone. They are marvels of ingenuity, amplifying human effort and transforming labor from brute force to skillful manipulation. Imagine a woman kneeling in a golden field of wheat, the sun low in the sky, guiding her sickle through stalks, each cut deliberate. The harvested grain is gathered into bundles, then transported to drying areas or storage pits. Every movement is informed by observation: the best height to cut, the ideal angle of the blade, the most efficient gathering methods. These practices, repeated daily over seasons, refine technique and skill, creating early forms of craftsmanship. Grinding stones complement these tools, turning raw grains into edible flour. The quernstone, a simple but revolutionary invention, allows humans to process cereals efficiently. A stationary lower stone paired with a handheld upper stone transforms kernels into powder through repetitive motion. This simple technology enables a shift from subsistence eating of raw or pounded grains to more versatile and nutritious foods, laying the foundation for baking, porridge, and storage-friendly provisions. Processing grain requires more than physical effort. It fosters innovation and coordination. Multiple members of a household may work together. One gathers and pours grain, another operates the upper stone, and a third collects the flour for storage or cooking. This division of labor, though modest, mirrors larger social structures that will emerge later. Tasks are repetitive, but repetition breeds skill, efficiency, and observation, shaping human understanding of cause and effect. Toolmaking itself becomes a central cultural activity. Flint and obsidian are chipped and polished with care. Wood is carved, shaped, and fitted to stone. Early humans learned to source raw materials strategically, understanding durability, sharpness, and ergonomics. Each tool carries not only practical utility but cultural knowledge. Patterns of manufacture, maintenance routines, and usage techniques are transmitted across generations. These skills strengthen group cohesion and reinforce shared identity. The introduction of tools also has broader ecological and social implications. Tools allow humans to cultivate larger plots of land, increasing food output and supporting population growth. Labor specialization becomes more pronounced as some individuals focus on tool making, others on planting, and still others on processing or storage. Hierarchies emerge organically, and knowledge accrues within families and communities, reinforcing continuity and stability. Even the design of early tools reflects observation and experimentation. Curved blades are more effective for harvesting cereals, flat stones work best for grinding certain grains, and handles are adapted for comfort and leverage. Trial and error is the teacher. Tools that fail are discarded, successful designs are replicated. In this way, human ingenuity interacts with the environment to produce an evolving technological culture, setting the stage for more complex machines in millennia to come. Tools also influence daily life and rhythm. The physicality of cutting, grinding, and cultivating imposes structure. Early humans organized their day around light, weather, and labor demands. Sunrise signals preparation, the warmest hours may be dedicated to heavy labor, and evening allows rest and reflection. This structured activity fosters temporal awareness and routine, further stabilizing sedentary life. Consider also the sensory dimension. The feel of a well-worn handle, the tactile resistance of grain under the grinding stone, the rhythmic sound of blade slicing stalks, all create intimate, repetitive experiences that reinforce skill and patience. These sensory engagements, combined with the physical effort, create a meditative flow, an immersive connection between humans, tools, and land. Tools also carry symbolic weight. Flint sickles and grinding stones are not just functional. They appear in ritual contexts, sometimes deposited in burials or ceremonial sites. They signify survival, ingenuity, and human mastery of nature. These objects, simple as they seem, embody knowledge, skill, and the capacity to transform raw resources into sustained life. Moreover, tools amplify cooperation. Harvesting fields or grinding large quantities of grain often requires group effort. Individuals coordinate their actions, synchronize motions, and develop informal systems of management. Communication, shared observation, and problem-solving become embedded in daily life. Social bonds strengthen as labor becomes not just individual survival, but collective enterprise. Technological progress also catalyzes cultural evolution. Pottery emerges to store processed grains. Simple plows are conceived to prepare soil more efficiently, and weaving techniques developed to produce containers, mats, and storage solutions. Each innovation reflects cumulative knowledge learned from observing nature, experimenting with materials, and sharing insights within communities. The cycle of observation, experimentation, and application drives cultural sophistication. Night falls on the valley, and humans gather in their homes, hands worn but skilled from the day's labor. Sickles are cleaned and stored, grinding stones set aside, and grain prepared for meals and storage. Conversations revolve around observations: how crops fared, how tools performed, how to improve efficiency. Children learn by observing, imitating, and participating, internalizing knowledge that will shape the next generation of farmers and craftsmen. The quiet power of tools lies in their ability to extend human agency. With sickles, grains can be harvested quickly. With grinding stones, calories are converted efficiently into sustenance. Labor is intensified yet optimized. Knowledge is encoded in every curve, edge, and handle. Humans learn that ingenuity can shape outcomes, that observation and experimentation yield tangible results, and that shared skills enable communities to thrive. Through these tools, the first tentative villages solidify. Food becomes more reliable, population density increases, and human settlement gains permanence. Early technology is modest, yet its impact is immense. It sets the stage for social complexity, ritualized labor, economic planning, and, ultimately, the rise of civilizations. As you relax under your blanket tonight, imagine running your hands over a smooth stone blade, feeling the grain slip under a quernstone, hearing the rhythmic scrape of cutting and grinding. Sense the quiet satisfaction, the focus, the shared purpose. This is the heartbeat of early farming life. Slow, deliberate, skillful, and transformative. Each tool, each motion, each observation reinforces a new human rhythm, one of labor, innovation, and cooperation, laying the groundwork for millennia of technological and cultural advancement. Tools are not merely instruments, they are extensions of the human mind, amplifying intention and shaping society. The sickles and grinding stones of early farmers represent more than utility. They are milestones in humanity, as conscious effort to master the environment, to create surplus, and to stabilize life. Through them, humans step fully into the role of cultivators, thinkers, and builders of the future. Imagine the sun rising over a quiet Neolithic village where the smell of fresh soil and grain fills the air. The villagers are busy tending fields and herds, moving in a rhythm dictated by the cycles of nature rather than the chase of prey. For thousands of years, humans survived as hunter-gatherers, consuming a diverse mix of wild plants, fruits, nuts, and the occasional hunted animal. Now, with the dawn of agriculture, the very foundation of human sustenance is shifting, quietly reshaping bodies, communities, and health in ways both profound and unexpected. Early farmers begin to rely heavily on domesticated grains: wheat, barley, millet, rice, and later maize. These crops provide reliable calories, enabling communities to linger in one place longer and support larger populations. With this predictability comes a dramatic increase in energy availability. The constant supply of carbohydrates supports growth and fertility, allowing villages to expand. Yet, this abundance comes at a cost. A diet based predominantly on a few staple grains is less varied than the diverse diets of foragers, introducing new nutritional challenges. The first noticeable effects appear in skeletal remains. Archaeologists observe that early farmers often exhibit signs of malnutrition, dental wear, and increased susceptibility to disease. Grinding grains into flour exposes humans to fine particles, which can wear teeth unevenly. Reliance on starchy staples reduces intake of essential proteins, vitamins, and minerals, occasionally leading to anemia or stunted growth. Populations initially flourish in number but show physiological signs of dietary stress. Meat consumption decreases as hunting declines, though domesticated animals provide some protein. Dairy becomes more common in regions where animals like goats, sheep, and cattle are domesticated. Humans experiment with fermentation, creating early cheeses or milk substitutes, allowing long-term storage and easier digestion. This gradual adaptation demonstrates remarkable ingenuity. Humans are learning not only to grow food, but to process it, ensuring that nutrition can be sustained across seasons and years. Agriculture also affects the timing and frequency of meals. Hunter-gatherers ate opportunistically, consuming whatever was available in a day's foraging. Farmers, however, eat according to cycles of planting, harvesting, and storage. Food becomes a communal and ritualized experience. Grain is milled, cooked, and distributed according to household needs, reflecting social roles and hierarchies. These practices influence behavior, daily routines, and the structure of community life. With settled life and dense populations, infectious disease begins to leave its mark. Living near animals, storing grains, and maintaining crowded huts introduce parasites and pathogens previously less common in mobile societies. Humans face new health challenges: intestinal worms, zoonotic diseases, and respiratory infections. Epidemics, once fleeting among nomads, now persist longer, shaping immunity and social structures. Communities adapt by developing simple sanitation practices, designated living areas, and storage solutions, demonstrating early public health strategies born from necessity. The physical demands of agriculture create new patterns of movement. Farmers bend to till soil, lift harvested crops, and carry water. Musculoskeletal stress increases, altering posture and bone structure. Repetitive labor leads to localized wear, while sedentary periods associated with storage and processing reduce overall mobility. This combination of effort and stillness introduces unique health challenges, contrasting sharply with the full-body activity of nomadic foragers. Cultural adaptations to diet emerge alongside physiological changes. Humans develop cooking techniques, from roasting to boiling, enhancing the digestibility of grains and proteins. Fermentation and preservation extend food availability beyond seasonal limitations. Culinary practices become central to social life, ritual, and identity, reflecting the deep intertwining of diet, community, and belief. Food is no longer merely sustenance, it carries meaning, status, and continuity across generations. Interestingly, agriculture also influences life expectancy and population dynamics. While infant mortality remains high, a reliable food supply supports higher birth rates. Villages grow in size, leading to denser social networks and new challenges in resource management. Humans learn to balance the demands of nutrition, labor, and communal responsibility, integrating health considerations into the emerging rhythm of settled life. Environmental changes compound dietary and health effects. Soil depletion, monocropping, and seasonal variability influence the availability of grains. Early farmers respond by rotating fields, selecting hardy plant varieties, and experimenting with irrigation. These innovations demonstrate an increasing awareness of the interplay between human activity, ecological balance, and well-being. Agriculture is no longer simply about survival. It is an ongoing experiment in sustaining life across time and space. Spiritual and ritual dimensions intertwine with diet. Many early societies developed ceremonies around planting and harvest, often invoking blessings for fertility, protection from pests, or abundant rain. Food is offered to deities, ancestors, or spirits, reinforcing cultural cohesion and transmitting knowledge. These rituals reflect a growing recognition of the sacredness of sustenance and the responsibility humans carry in managing life. The social implications of dietary change are equally profound. Surplus production allows some individuals to pursue tasks beyond immediate subsistence: toolmaking, pottery, trade, or leadership. Communities become more stratified, with access to high-quality or stored foods potentially signifying status. Diet and nutrition, once largely egalitarian among hunter-gatherers, now become intertwined with emerging social hierarchies. Imagine a family preparing for a harvest meal. Grain is ground on a quern stone. Legumes are boiled in clay pots. Milk is strained and fermented. Children learn skills by participating in these tasks, absorbing not only techniques but cultural knowledge. The entire process strengthens social bonds, teaches responsibility, and embeds an understanding of the link between environment, labor, and sustenance. Agriculture reshapes health not only physically but cognitively. The mental focus required to monitor fields, manage storage, tend livestock, and plan for seasonal variations enhances foresight, problem-solving, and memory. Humans must track the ripening of crops, anticipate shortages, and coordinate communal labor. Nutrition supports growing populations, but the cognitive load increases, linking diet, survival, and culture in a complex web of adaptation. Despite challenges, the net effect of agriculture is transformative. Reliable food, population growth, technological innovation, and cultural development set the stage for permanent villages, social hierarchy, and eventually cities. Humans are now positioned to shape their environment consciously rather than simply react to it. Each change in diet and health is both a consequence of settlement and a driver of future civilization. As night falls, picture the villagers sitting around fires, eating grain-based stews, sharing milk and cheese, observing the stars above. Children listen to stories while elders discuss planting, harvesting, and care of herds. The rhythms of labor, sustenance, and culture are deeply entwined. Humans are learning to sustain themselves not through immediate consumption, but through planning, observation, and careful management of both plants and animals. Tonight, as you settle under your blanket with a cup of warm tea, imagine the taste of early bread, the texture of freshly ground grain, the warmth of shared meals. Sense the quiet yet profound impact of agriculture on human bodies, communities, and consciousness. Witness the subtle transformation. Humans, through cultivation and care, are reshaping not only the land, but their own existence, step by deliberate step. Agriculture is a catalyst. It alters diet, influences health, structures social life, and stimulates cultural evolution. Every harvested stalk, every prepared meal, every moment of planning and observation contributes to a new rhythm of human life, an enduring legacy of experimentation, adaptation, and ingenuity that will reverberate across millennia. Close your eyes and imagine the first light of dawn spilling across a fertile valley, the mist curling gently over cultivated fields. In this quiet, early world, humans pause before work begins. There is reverence in the air, an unspoken acknowledgement that the crops they plant and tend are more than sustenance. They are life itself, fragile yet essential. The act of planting is no longer merely practical. It has become ritual, a bridge between humans, the land, and forces beyond sight or comprehension. Early agricultural societies quickly recognized the cycles of nature as more than predictable events. They were imbued with meaning. The rising sun, seasonal rains, lunar phases, and river floods are observed with careful attention, patterns memorized and respected. Humans begin to perceive that their survival depends not only on physical labor, but on attuning themselves to these rhythms. Ritual becomes a means of influencing, honoring, and understanding the natural world. Picture a small group gathering at the edge of a freshly plowed field. Hands hover over seeds, sprinkled deliberately into neat rows. Elders speak quietly, chanting or intoning words whose exact meaning may now be lost, but whose purpose is clear: to bless the seed, to honor the earth, and to invite a bountiful harvest. Smoke rises from a clay vessel, carrying incense or aromatic herbs, the aroma mingling with the scent of soil and grain. The community stands together, each participant performing gestures passed down through generations. Rituals serve multiple functions. On a practical level, they mark important moments in the agricultural calendar: the first sowing, the first sprouting, the onset of harvest. On a social level, they reinforce communal cohesion, shared responsibility, and collective identity. On a spiritual level, they create a dialogue between humans and the unseen forces that govern growth and fertility. By acknowledging these forces, humans express respect for life, a recognition that survival depends on cooperation with nature rather than domination alone. Many early societies create symbolic representations of the earth, crops, and fertility. Figurines of women, often interpreted as fertility icons, appear in proximity to fields and storage areas. Animals are depicted alongside humans in carved stones or painted ceramics, reflecting the intertwined existence of livestock, wild species, and people. These objects are not merely decorative. They encode ritual knowledge, ethical values, and cosmological understanding, acting as tangible connections to the unseen energies guiding the community. Consider the rhythm of planting as a spiritual practice. The repetitive act of sowing seeds mirrors the cycle of life: select, plant, nurture, and harvest. The motion itself becomes meditative, fostering concentration, patience, and a sense of harmony with the earth. Early humans learned that care, timing, and intention influence outcomes, reinforcing the sacredness of work and the subtle interdependence between human effort and natural response. In some regions, celestial bodies inform ritual timing. Observing solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles allows early farmers to predict seasonal changes, align planting schedules, and anticipate floods or dry periods. These observations are incorporated into ceremonies, festivals, and offerings, blending empirical knowledge with symbolic meaning. Ritual becomes both a spiritual expression and a practical guide, an elegant fusion of science and faith before formal disciplines existed. Ritual also addresses uncertainty and risk. Crop failure, drought, pests, or livestock loss could devastate early communities. Through ceremonies, offerings, and invocations, humans attempt to influence forces beyond their control, seeking protection and favor. Even when outcomes were unpredictable, the act of ritual provided psychological comfort, social cohesion, and a framework for collective action. Communities learned to plan, to cooperate, and to endure, supported by both tangible effort and intangible belief. Music, chanting, and rhythmic movement often accompany these rituals. The beat of drums, clapping hands, or simple songs synchronize the group, reinforcing unity and shared intention. Children observe, learn, and imitate, internalizing the timing, gestures, and values embedded in these practices. Ritual education is cultural inheritance. Knowledge of planting, care, and harvest is transmitted alongside ethics, stories, and social norms, ensuring continuity of both survival skills and communal identity. The landscape itself becomes a canvas of spiritual engagement. Sacred groves, riverbanks, hills, or tree clusters are associated with fertility, protection, or blessing. Villagers may plant particular species in ceremonial plots, leave offerings for the spirits of the land, or mark the edges of fields with carved stones or symbolic objects. In doing so, humans integrate ecological awareness with cultural and spiritual expression, creating a multi-layered interaction with the environment. Over time, these rituals influence daily labor. Work in the fields is imbued with mindfulness and reverence, not merely effort. Farmers treat the earth and seeds with care, observing plant health, soil conditions, and animal behavior, interpreting each detail as both practical guidance and spiritual sign. This dual awareness fosters responsibility, empathy, and long-term thinking, encouraging humans to manage resources wisely and sustainably. Imagine a full moon ceremony in the village. Families gather after a day of work, sharing stories, singing, and offering small portions of grain or milk to deities, spirits, or ancestors. The night is quiet, except for the low murmurs of ritual words and the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. These moments reinforce communal bonds, ensuring that labor, knowledge, and values are passed from one generation to the next. Ritual, in this sense, becomes both education and spiritual connection. Planting rituals often intertwine with early notions of morality and responsibility. Humans recognize that carelessness, neglect, or disrespect could jeopardize crops and, by extension, survival. Ethical conduct, cooperation, and attention to detail are reinforced through ceremonial practice. Communities learn that individual behavior influences collective well-being, embedding social rules and accountability into the rhythm of agricultural life. Through ritual, humans begin to perceive themselves as part of a larger system. The land, the plants, the animals, the seasons, and the unseen forces all interact with human action. This awareness shapes early ecological consciousness, encouraging stewardship, observation, and respect for life. Spirituality and agriculture are inseparable, each informing the other, each reinforcing patterns of behavior that will influence settlement, governance, and cultural development. Night descends over the village, and the fields rest under the moon's pale glow. Smoke rises from hearths, dogs settle near huts, and families gather together. The rituals of planting are complete, yet their impact endures. Knowledge is transmitted, bonds are strengthened, and humans are reminded of their place in the cycle of life. Spirituality has merged with survival, infusing work with meaning and connecting humans to forces both seen and unseen. As you settle under a cozy blanket, cup of tea in hand, imagine stepping into this valley. Hear the chant of elders, the rustle of grain, the soft bleating of animals, the rhythmic beat of communal activity. Sense the careful balance of intention, labor, and reverence. Witness how humans, through ritual, bridge the tangible and intangible, creating a life that honors both the earth and the spirit. Ritual and spirituality of planting are more than ceremonial. They are the early architecture of human society. They guide work, reinforce ethics, transmit knowledge, and cultivate mindfulness. In these simple, repeated actions, humans learn lessons that will resonate through the ages: patience, foresight, cooperation, and the enduring interplay between human action and the natural world. The legacy of these practices is profound. Even as civilizations grow more complex, echoes of early planting rituals, festivals, offerings, agricultural calendars remain embedded in culture. Through ceremony, humans codified knowledge, ethics, and social cohesion, creating the invisible scaffolding upon which permanent settlements and organized societies would rise. Tonight, as sleep begins to pull you gently under, imagine the first seeds taking root, nourished not only by soil and rain, but by ritual, observation, and human care. Witness the quiet birth of a spiritual relationship with the land, a relationship that will shape the human story for millennia. Imagine stepping into a sunlit valley some 10,000 years ago. On one side, a small band of hunter-gatherers moves lightly through forests and grasslands, carrying spears, baskets, and the knowledge of seasons and wildlife. On the other side, a nascent village spreads across fertile land, with clay huts, granaries, and fenced fields of ripening grains. Two distinct lifestyles, each adapted to survival, coexist, yet diverge in profound ways. Today, we explore the contrasts and consequences of this pivotal transition in human history. Hunter-gatherers have lived in a dynamic rhythm with nature for tens of thousands of years. Their survival depends on mobility, deep knowledge of plant and animal cycles, and flexible social structures. Families or small bands move seasonally, exploiting resources as they become available. Their diet is diverse: fruits, nuts, roots, wild grains, fish, and hunted game. Life is physically demanding, but resilient. Humans are adapted to shifting conditions, moving when resources run low and leaving depleted areas to recover naturally. Farming villages, in contrast, are rooted in permanence. Crops must be planted, tended, and harvested in fixed locations, and livestock needs consistent care. Energy is focused on cultivating and protecting resources rather than following them. This sedentary existence allows the accumulation of surplus, which supports larger populations, but also concentrates labor, risk, and responsibility. The static nature of settlement exposes villagers to new vulnerabilities, including crop failure, disease, and social tension. Diet is a central difference. Hunter-gatherers enjoy diversity but unpredictability. Calories fluctuate with seasons and success in hunting. Villagers gain reliable staples, wheat, barley, rice, but lose variety, often resulting in nutritional deficiencies. Reliance on a few crops increases susceptibility to famine if conditions fail. Yet, agricultural diets allow storage and planning, creating food security and enabling population growth. This trade-off between variety and stability is one of the earliest and most consequential human decisions. Social structure reflects lifestyle differences. Hunter-gatherer bands are often egalitarian. Leadership is fluid, based on skill, experience, or consensus. Decisions are shared, and mobility discourages rigid hierarchy. Farming villages develop more complex organization. Land management, water control, storage allocation, and labor coordination demand leadership. Elders or leaders emerge to plan planting, mediate disputes, and allocate resources, laying the groundwork for social stratification that will define later civilizations. Settlement also encourages specialization. In hunter-gatherer societies, all members contribute similarly to survival tasks: hunting, gathering, tool-making. In villages, some focus on farming, others on tool production, pottery, weaving, or ritual practice. This division of labor fosters skill refinement, technological innovation, and knowledge accumulation. Crafts and trades begin to emerge, giving rise to early economies and social interdependence within the community. The physical environment reflects these contrasts. Hunter-gatherers move lightly across landscapes, leaving minimal traces. Villagers modify their surroundings, clearing forests, constructing huts, fencing fields, digging irrigation channels, and creating storage pits. The landscape itself becomes evidence of permanence, a record of human planning and labor. These environmental changes also introduce long-term consequences, such as soil depletion, altered local ecosystems, and new challenges in pest management. Health differences are striking. Hunter-gatherers enjoy a varied diet and strong physical conditioning, which provides resilience to many ailments. Farmers, while benefiting from predictable calories, often suffer malnutrition-related issues, dental wear from processed grains, and diseases associated with denser living and proximity to domesticated animals. The shift to agriculture creates new challenges even as it supports population growth and settlement stability. Cultural life evolves differently as well. Hunter-gatherers transmit knowledge orally, focusing on survival skills, stories, and seasonal awareness. Villages cultivate rituals, ceremonies, and symbolic objects tied to planting, harvest, and social order. Art, music, and shared narratives flourish within settlements, reinforcing identity and cohesion. These cultural practices reflect a deeper engagement with both the environment and each other, establishing early societal norms and ethical frameworks. Risk management diverges sharply. Hunter-gatherers disperse risk through mobility and diet diversity, moving to optimize resources. Villagers concentrate risk in fixed plots and stored grain. Drought, flood, or pest infestation can threaten entire communities. This concentration drives innovation. Crop rotation, early irrigation, pest deterrence, and communal labor strategies emerge as strategies to buffer against uncertainty. Humans learn to plan ahead, monitor environmental cues, and cooperate to ensure collective survival. Education and knowledge transmission become formalized in villages. Children learn farming techniques, tool use, and ritual practice through observation and participation. Generational knowledge accumulates, producing incremental improvement in agriculture, technology, and social coordination. Hunter-gatherers transmit knowledge too, but the permanence of settlement allows refinement, specialization, and record-keeping that accelerates cumulative cultural evolution. Trade and interaction expand. Villages often exchange surplus grain, tools, or crafted goods with neighboring communities, fostering early networks of commerce and diplomacy. Hunter-gatherers engage in exchanges as well, but mobility limits scale. Sedentary life enables surplus management, creating opportunities for exchange, alliances, and cultural diffusion. These interactions lay the foundation for regional economies and ultimately, urban development. Conflict management becomes necessary. In mobile bands, disputes are often temporary or resolved through relocation. In villages, proximity of multiple families and accumulated resources heightens the potential for disputes over land, water, or storage. Leadership, social norms, and early legal frameworks begin to emerge, establishing rules for conflict resolution and cooperation, which will later evolve into codified law and governance. The psychological experience of life diverges as well. Hunter-gatherers are attuned to constant movement and immediate survival challenges. Villagers develop foresight, long-term planning, and strategic thinking as their well-being depends on seasonal cycles, storage, and collective effort. Patience, observation, and social intelligence become vital for success, shaping human cognition and societal development in profound ways. As you picture these worlds side by side, imagine the sounds and sensations. the crackle of a fire in a hunter-gatherer camp, the rustling of a wheat field in a village, the rhythmic pounding of grain on quernstones, the laughter of children learning rituals, the quiet murmurs of elders planning planting. Two lifestyles, each adapted to survival, each imparting lessons about human resilience, creativity, and adaptation. Hunter-gatherer life is flexible, diverse, and resilient, yet constrained in scale and long-term stability. Understanding these contrasts helps us appreciate the difficult choices early humans faced and the profound consequences of embracing sedentary agriculture. Tonight, as you cozy under a blanket and settle with a cup of tea, picture the first villagers comparing their lives to those of wandering relatives, observing the differences in diet, health, labor, and society. Reflect on the quiet triumphs and hidden costs of settlement. Humanity's first real experiment in transforming nature, society, and self through permanence. The lessons learned here will ripple forward through millennia, shaping civilizations yet to come. Early villages versus hunter-gatherer bands is not just a story of survival, it is the story of human choice, adaptation, and the complex interplay of environment, culture, and technology. It is a tale of risk and reward, of labor and leisure, of diet, health, and social transformation. In these first settlements, humans begin to understand the consequences of permanence, the responsibilities of abundance, and the intricate balance required to sustain life in one place. Picture the gentle sway of golden wheat fields under a warm sun, the emerald rice paddies reflecting a brilliant sky, or the towering stalks of maize rustling in a summer breeze. To the untrained eye, these crops might appear as simple gifts of nature, yet they represent one of humanity's most profound achievements, the genetic revolution of plants. This is the story of how early humans, through observation, selection, and care, transformed wild species into the cornerstone of civilization, ensuring food security and shaping the destiny of societies for millennia. Thousands of years ago, early farmers began to notice patterns in their fields. Some seeds produced larger, tastier, or more resilient plants than others. Others thrived in particular soils or resisted drought better. Humans, attentive and adaptive, began to select these seeds for planting, unwittingly initiating the first steps of genetic modification. Each generation of cultivation reinforced traits favorable to survival and sustenance. Over time, this selective pressure transformed wild grasses, grains, and plants into domesticated crops with properties distinct from their ancestors. Consider wheat, one of the earliest domesticated grains. Wild wheat disperses its seeds easily, relying on wind and natural forces to propagate. Early farmers selected stalks that retained their seeds, preventing them from scattering before harvest. By consistently planting these non-shattering varieties, humans unknowingly guided evolution, creating wheat that could be harvested more efficiently and reliably. This seemingly small decision had monumental implications. It allowed the accumulation of surplus, the growth of villages, and the foundation of economies based on reliable caloric resources. Rice, cultivated primarily in Asia, underwent a similar transformation. Wild rice thrives in shallow waters, producing small yields with significant variability. Through careful irrigation, observation, and selection, early farmers encouraged larger, more productive grains, adapted to human-managed paddies. Irrigation techniques not only enhanced growth but also influenced plant evolution. Rice varieties capable of withstanding submerged conditions or fluctuating water levels became dominant. Humans and rice, in essence, co-evolved, each shaping the other's development over generations. Maize, domesticated in the Americas, illustrates another remarkable example. Its ancestor, teosinte, bears little resemblance to the corn we recognize today. Early Mesoamerican farmers selected seeds with larger kernels and more robust ears, gradually producing plants that were highly productive, nutritious, and suited to storage. This genetic transformation enabled dense populations, urban centers, and complex civilizations in regions where maize became the primary staple. The careful observation and manipulation of plant traits underscore the ingenuity and foresight of these early cultivators. Selective breeding was not a conscious genetic science. It was observation, experimentation, and iteration. Farmers noted which plants thrived, which resisted disease, which provided the best yield. Seeds were saved season by season, with slight adjustments to planting patterns, spacing, and care. Knowledge was transmitted orally and through practice, with families, clans, and communities maintaining detailed understanding of local crops. Over generations, this cumulative process created a diversity of cultivated species, each uniquely adapted to its environment and purpose. The genetic revolution of plants also influenced human culture and diet. Staple crops like wheat, rice, and maize became central to cuisine, ritual, and social identity. Bread, porridge, and maize-based meals are not just food. They carry symbolic weight, mark seasonal cycles, and reinforce communal life. Humans learned to store, mill, and cook these grains, developing techniques that enhanced nutrition, digestibility, and culinary diversity. In this sense, the evolution of plants and human culture advanced hand in hand. Environmental impact was profound. As humans selected high-yield plants, landscapes transformed, fields expanded, forests were cleared, and wetlands were managed. Early farmers experimented with irrigation, terracing, and soil management, creating conditions favorable to their chosen crops. These modifications facilitated population growth and settlement stability, but also introduced challenges, including soil depletion, pests, and water management needs, problems that would drive innovation and further refinement of agricultural practices. Consider the sensory experience of these crops. Wheat stalks bend gently in the wind, grains glint in sunlight, and maize leaves rustle with the slightest breeze. Early humans engaged with these plants daily, touching, smelling, harvesting, and tasting. This intimate relationship fostered understanding, respect, and ingenuity. Observation became knowledge. Tactile engagement became mastery. Through this close bond, humans transformed the biology of plants and the rhythm of their own lives. The genetic revolution also fostered trade and economic exchange. Surplus grains could be stored, transported, or exchanged with neighboring communities. Certain varieties became highly prized, spreading across regions and influencing agricultural practices over vast distances. Knowledge of crop management, selection, and storage became a form of social capital, reinforcing leadership, specialization, and cooperation. Plant domestication, therefore, was not just biological, it was social and economic. Ritual and spirituality intertwined with the genetic revolution. Crops were honored through offerings, festivals, and ceremonies, reflecting their central role in human survival. The success of wheat, rice, or maize was often attributed to divine favor, and rituals reinforced human responsibility to care for these life-giving plants. In celebrating and protecting crops, humans encoded values of stewardship, sustainability, and foresight into cultural practices, ensuring continuity of both food systems and social cohesion. Health outcomes evolved alongside agriculture. Domesticated crops provided reliable calories, supporting population growth and enabling longer-term settlement. However, reliance on a limited number of staple crops introduced new vulnerabilities: nutrient deficiencies, susceptibility to crop failure, and exposure to pests or pathogens. Communities adapted through diversified planting, crop rotation, and incorporation of legumes or animal products. The genetic revolution, therefore, was inseparable from innovation in diet, nutrition, and ecological management. Technological evolution paralleled plant evolution. Tools for planting, harvesting, and processing adapted to the new crops: sickles for wheat, irrigation systems for rice paddies, storage containers for maize. The synergy between plant domestication and tool development demonstrates the interdependence of human ingenuity and ecological transformation. Innovations in one domain reinforced progress in the other, accelerating the pace of cultural and agricultural sophistication. Population dynamics were fundamentally affected. Reliable staple crops enabled villages to expand, attract migrants, and consolidate resources. Larger populations facilitated knowledge exchange, communal labor, and defense. The genetic revolution of plants underpinned the demographic shift from small, mobile bands to dense, permanent settlements, a prerequisite for the emergence of cities, governance structures, and complex societies. Even today, the impact of these early genetic decisions resonates. Modern wheat, rice, and maize bear the legacy of thousands of years of human selection, adaptation, and cultivation. The choices of early farmers shaped nutrition, culture, and economies across continents, demonstrating the profound power of attentive observation and deliberate care in transforming the natural world. Imagine standing in a modern field, brushing your hand along the tall wheat stalks, feeling the smooth kernels of rice between your fingers, or marveling at a towering maize cob. These are the descendants of ancient experiments, of patient selection, and of human insight applied to the rhythms of nature. Each kernel carries within it a history of human ingenuity, perseverance, and vision. Tonight, as you settle beneath a blanket and sip a warm beverage, picture the first humans selecting seeds with care, planting them in soil prepared by hand, and observing the results season by season. Hear the quiet rustle of stalks, the gentle murmur of wind across fields, and imagine the satisfaction of early farmers as they witnessed their deliberate choices shaping life itself. The genetic revolution of plants was not just agriculture, it was humanity, as first conscious act of ecological and biological engineering, quietly laying the foundation for civilizations yet to come. Through wheat, rice, and maize, humans learned the intimate power of observation, selection, and care. They discovered that small, consistent decisions could reshape entire species, alter landscapes, and sustain societies. The genetic revolution of plants exemplifies the profound interconnection of humans and nature, illustrating how attention, intention, and patience can transform both biology and culture. Picture a sun-drenched valley in the Neolithic era. Villagers gather around neatly stacked piles of grain. Clay granaries dot the landscape, and the scent of dried seeds mixes with earth and smoke. This is the first agricultural surplus, a tangible result of millennia of careful cultivation, observation, and human ingenuity. Unlike hunter-gatherers who consumed what they found immediately, these early farmers now control more food than they need for a single season. This abundance transforms society, economics, health, and culture in ways that will resonate through the ages. The creation of surplus is not instantaneous. It begins with mastery of planting, irrigation, and selective breeding of crops like wheat, barley, rice, and maize. Farmers learn which seeds produce the highest yields, how to rotate fields to maintain fertility, and how to protect plants from pests and unpredictable weather. Each decision, when to sow, how densely to plant, when to harvest, is meticulously observed, forming a body of knowledge passed orally and through daily practice. Over generations, these efforts result in consistently more food than is immediately consumed. Storage is essential. Grain cannot remain viable indefinitely without protection from moisture, pests, and mold. Early humans construct clay silos, underground pits, woven baskets, and raised platforms to preserve their harvests. These storage solutions reflect ingenuity and foresight as well as an understanding of environmental conditions. By ensuring that food is available beyond the immediate season, surplus enables planning, risk management, and resilience against famine or crop failure. Surplus has profound social implications. Communities can now support more people than the immediate labor force can feed on the day's harvest. Villages grow, families settle, and social networks expand. Leadership emerges to oversee production, storage, and distribution. The concentration of resources in granaries also introduces questions of fairness, responsibility, and power. Access to stored food becomes a form of social capital, setting the stage for early hierarchies and social stratification. Economically, surplus allows specialization. Not everyone must be involved in planting or harvesting. Some individuals can focus on tool-making, pottery, weaving, or trade. These specialized roles foster technological innovation, cultural expression, and early forms of commerce. Villages become centers of knowledge, craft, and exchange, with surplus serving as the engine of both population growth and societal complexity. Health outcomes also shift. Reliable food availability reduces periods of scarcity, improving survival rates and supporting population expansion. Nutrition stabilizes as calorie intake becomes more predictable, though dependence on staple crops can still produce deficiencies in protein, vitamins, or minerals. Humans adapt with culinary innovation, fermentation, milling, cooking techniques to optimize nutrition and digestibility, reflecting an evolving understanding of food science long before formal study. Surplus reshapes daily life and labor. Rather than constantly foraging or hunting, villagers engage in planning, tending, and ritual. Calendars and seasonal markers guide activity, while observation of plant growth informs timing. Work becomes cyclical and predictable, enabling leisure, craftsmanship, and cultural practice. Communities develop shared rituals around storage, harvest festivals, and offerings, reinforcing social cohesion and a sense of collective responsibility. The presence of stored food also affects risk management and resilience. Crop failure, drought, or pest infestation, once catastrophic for hunter-gatherers, can now be mitigated by carefully rationed reserves. Villagers develop early strategies for equitable distribution, rotation, and protection of food, effectively laying the groundwork for economic planning, resource allocation, and even early taxation or tribute systems. Surplus transforms vulnerability into agency. Trade flourishes in the presence of surplus. Communities exchange excess grain for tools, pottery, animal products, or raw materials unavailable locally. This interaction spreads crops, knowledge, and innovation across regions. For example, surplus wheat may travel hundreds of kilometers, influencing culinary traditions, settlement patterns, and agricultural practices elsewhere. Humans discover that surplus is not merely sustenance, it is currency, leverage, and a medium of connection. Psychologically, surplus influences human behavior. Security in food allows planning for long-term goals, investment in tools, housing, or social projects. Individuals can pursue tasks beyond immediate survival, such as teaching, art, ritual, or technological experimentation. This shift nurtures cognitive growth, problem-solving, and social complexity. The very act of storing food cultivates foresight, discipline, and patience, traits that ripple across generations. Conflict and cooperation are shaped by surplus as well. Control of stored food can create tension or incentive for negotiation, fostering leadership and governance structures. Villagers must balance individual needs with collective well-being, developing ethical norms and social rules. Disputes over access or contribution are managed through emerging authority figures, consensus, or ritual mediation. The surplus becomes both a source of power and a tool for communal cohesion. Environmental awareness deepens. Surplus encourages careful land management, pest control, and water management. Fields are monitored for fertility, rotation cycles are implemented, and irrigation techniques refined. Early humans recognize the interdependence of labor, resources, and environment. Agricultural surplus drives not only social innovation, but ecological mindfulness, a symbiotic relationship between human ingenuity and natural systems. Culturally, surplus reinforces ritual and spirituality. Harvest festivals, offerings to deities, and ceremonial storage of grain reflect reverence for the sources of life. The abundance of food allows for symbolic acts, celebrations, and storytelling that reinforce shared values, ethics, and identity. Humans learn to associate labor, care, and foresight with divine favor or ancestral blessing, embedding cultural memory into daily practice. Education evolves alongside surplus. Children learn farming, storage, and trade through participation in communal tasks. Knowledge of crop selection, preservation, and distribution is passed down alongside moral lessons and ritual practice. Surplus allows observation over multiple seasons, teaching long-term cause and effect relationships, environmental cues, and social responsibility. It becomes a living curriculum for the next generation, preserving skills critical for survival and advancement. Imagine the first grain being poured into a clay silo, Each kernel represents not only nourishment but careful human planning, observation, and adaptation. The community pauses, acknowledging their labor, the cycles of nature, and the tenuous balance between abundance and scarcity. Surplus transforms perception. Food is no longer consumed solely for immediate survival. It becomes strategy, security, and legacy. Tonight, as you settle under a blanket with a cup of warm tea, picture the quiet satisfaction of early farmers observing their stored grain. Feel the weight of responsibility and potential, the hum of a village coordinated by calendars, rituals, and shared labor. Sense the subtle power shift from reactive survival to proactive planning, a transformation that will underpin cities, governance, trade, and civilization itself. The first agricultural surplus is not merely a practical achievement, it is a cultural and cognitive revolution. It teaches humans about abundance, scarcity, responsibility, cooperation, and foresight. It connects individuals to each other, to the land, and to the passage of time. It sets the stage for urbanization, hierarchy, and the complex societies that will dominate the landscape for millennia. As you drift toward sleep, envision these early villagers, surrounded by granaries, observing the first signs of seasonal change and planning the next sowing. Listen to the quiet rustle of stored grain, the distant murmur of conversation, the soft footsteps of children learning the cycles of life. The first surplus is both a product and a teacher. It sustains bodies, nurtures society, and signals humanity's first conscious manipulation of nature to secure the future. Through surplus and storage, humans learn foresight, cooperation, and stewardship. They discover that abundance carries responsibility, that planning yields security, and that careful observation can transform not only food, but society itself. This quiet revolution, grain safely stored for future needs, becomes the invisible engine driving the rise of permanent villages, specialization, and ultimately civilization. As you settle into a cozy blanket, cup of warm tea in hand, let your mind wander back across millennia to the first valleys where humans made a choice that would alter the course of history. Picture the hunters observing seasonal movements of game, the gatherers foraging for nuts and roots, the children learning which berries are safe to eat. Life was dictated by movement, by cycles of scarcity and abundance, by the rhythm of nature itself. Every day required attention, skill, and cooperation. But somewhere in those fertile valleys, humans began to imagine a different path, a path rooted in permanence, foresight, and cultivation. The transition from nomadism to farming was not a single moment, but a slow unfolding of observation, experimentation, and adaptation. It began with curiosity. Why not save the best seeds for planting next season? Why not corral animals to ensure a constant source of milk, meat, or labor? These early experiments in agriculture were revolutionary in their simplicity, yet their consequences were profound. Humans began to shape the world around them in a deliberate way, guiding evolution, creating abundance, and altering their own society in the process. Imagine a hunter-gatherer band watching a seed sprout where it had been intentionally planted. Perhaps it was wheat, barley, or rice. A single stalk pushes through the soil, bending in the wind, glinting in the sun. This tiny act embodies foresight, patience, and intention. It signals the birth of the agricultural mind, the understanding that effort today can yield sustenance tomorrow, that humans can influence nature rather than passively follow it. In that moment, the foundation of civilization quietly takes root. Settling in permanent villages introduced new rhythms and responsibilities. Life became tied to the land in a way it never had been before. Fields needed tending, irrigation needed monitoring, animals needed care. Labor became organized, tasks were divided, and social structures slowly emerged. Elders and leaders guided planting schedules, mediated disputes, and ensured the community worked as one. Families and communities found their lives intertwined not just socially, but ecologically, ethically, and spiritually. The act of farming became inseparable from ritual, education, and social cohesion. Surplus transformed society. When humans could store more than they immediately consumed, life became richer in opportunity. Food security allowed for specialization, innovation, and leisure. Craftspeople could refine tools, artisans could create objects of beauty, and elders could teach. Villages grew, networks of trade and communication emerged, and culture deepened. Yet surplus also introduced complexity, the need for storage, leadership, equitable distribution, and risk management. Humanity learned that abundance carried responsibility, and this lesson echoes through every civilization that followed. The relationship between humans and plants became one of intimate co-evolution. Selective planting reshaped the genetics of wheat, rice, and maize. Each harvest taught lessons in observation, care, and experimentation. Seeds became partners, not just sustenance. This genetic revolution laid the foundation for population growth, for the emergence of cities, and for the sophisticated agricultural systems that would sustain empires. Every kernel of grain represents centuries of human ingenuity, patience, and foresight. The physical environment transformed as well. Villages altered landscapes with fields, irrigation channels, and storage structures. Forests were cleared, terraces constructed, soils managed. Humans began to understand ecological balance, the interdependence of plants, animals, water, and people. Early lessons in stewardship, risk management, and sustainability are embedded in these first agricultural communities, guiding future civilizations in ways we continue to learn from even today. Daily life took on a new texture. Work became rhythmic, punctuated by observation, ritual, and communal activity. Children learned by doing, watching elders, and participating in both labor and ceremony. Knowledge accumulated, transmitted not just in words, but in gesture, habit, and practice. Humans learned foresight, patience, and planning, the mental frameworks that would allow for the development of governance, science, and technology. Ritual, spirituality, and culture were inseparable from the agricultural life. Planting ceremonies, harvest offerings, and seasonal festivals embedded meaning into labor. Humans acknowledged forces beyond themselves. The cycles of nature, the spirits of land and water, ancestral guidance. These rituals reinforced community, transmitted knowledge, and created shared identity. They were a quiet declaration that survival alone was not enough. Life could be beautiful, ordered, and sacred. Yet the shift from nomadism to sedentary life also brought challenges. Disease, malnutrition, and social stratification emerged as populations concentrated. Crop failures carried new stakes. Environmental management became essential. Humans were forced to reckon with risk, to innovate, and to cooperate on a scale previously unnecessary. These challenges prompted ingenuity, leadership, and ethical reflection. In a way, adversity refined humanity's capacity to plan, adapt, and organize. Skills that would define the trajectory of civilization. From hunter-gatherer bands to early farming villages, the story of human transformation is a story of observation, adaptation, and choice. Every small decision, planting a seed, domesticating an animal, building a granary, contributed to a future that would ultimately support cities, writing, law, and empire. The echoes of these first communities resonate through history, reminding us that civilization begins not with conquest or power, but with curiosity, care, and the courage to change the relationship between humans and the natural world. Tonight, as your eyelids grow heavy and the warmth of blankets and tea surrounds you, imagine walking among these first villagers. Feel the soft soil beneath your feet, hear the rustle of grain, smell the smoke from hearths. Observe the meticulous care of seeds, the laughter of children, the chants of elders guiding planting rituals. Sense the profound shift from mobility to permanence, from scarcity to abundance, from instinct to planning. You are witnessing the quiet birth of the agricultural mind, the seed of civilization itself. As the night deepens, recognize the larger implications. Every granary, every carefully selected plant, every ritual performed in reverence of life marks the first steps toward structured societies. Leaders, specialists, and artisans begin to emerge. Knowledge accumulates, culture flourishes. Humanity discovers foresight, cooperation, and stewardship, lessons that will echo into future ages of kingdoms, empires, and cities. And yet, the story is far from complete. The lessons of these early villages set the stage for the next great transformation. Humans learning to manage water, to engineer rivers and canals, to harness nature on a scale beyond individual fields. The shift from reliance on rainfall and local fertility to controlled irrigation marks the next chapter in the story of civilization. In this way, the journey from forager to farmer is both ending and beginning. You have followed the quiet, deliberate steps of early humans, felt the rhythms of their lives, and witnessed the profound impact of planting, surplus, and settlement. Now your mind drifts, carrying the lessons of patience, care, observation, and cooperation into dreams, where rivers, irrigation, and the next wave of human ingenuity await.